The notification sound on my phone at 2:47 a.m. wasn't unusual. What was unusual was seeing our joint savings account balance flash a big, fat zero. I sat up in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. The blue light from my phone screen felt cold against my face as I refreshed the banking app 3 times, hoping it was some kind of glitch. But no, $47,000? Gone. "Honey?" I whispered to the man sleeping next to me, the man I'd shared a bed with for 6 years, the man I'd trusted with every penny I'd ever earned. "Marcus, wake up." He stirred, mumbling something about work stress, but when I showed him the phone screen, his eyes snapped open with the kind of alertness that told me everything I needed to know. "Oh, that," he said, running his hand through his disheveled hair. Not, "What happened?" or, "That's impossible." Just, "Oh, that." My stomach dropped into some dark abyss I didn't know existed inside me. "What do you mean, oh, that?" My voice came out steadier than I felt, which surprised both of us. Marcus sat up, suddenly looking like a child caught with chocolate on his face. "Look, Rachel, I can explain." "Explain what? Explain how our entire life savings just vanished into thin air?" He was quiet for a moment, and in that silence, I heard the sound of my world cracking. You know that moment when you realize the person you love most has been lying to your face? It's not dramatic like in movies. It's quiet, devastating, like discovering the ground beneath your feet was never really there. "I invested it," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "You what?" "There was this opportunity. My cousin Derek had this business venture, and he needed capital. He promised triple returns within 6 months. Rachel, I thought I was securing our future." I stared at him, this man I'd built dreams with, and felt something shift inside me. Something cold and calculating that I'd never felt before, without telling me. It wasn't a question. "I knew you'd worry. I knew you'd overthink it. I was going to surprise you when the money came back with interest." The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity. "And Derek? Where's Derek now?" Marcus's silence stretched between us like a chasm. "He's not answering my calls," he admitted. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming, and I wasn't ready to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice taking on this eerily calm tone that seemed to unnerve him. "You took $47,000, money I saved working double shifts at the hospital, money from my grandmother's inheritance, money we were supposed to use for our wedding next year, and you gave it to your cousin Derek, who's now ghosting you. It's not like that. It's exactly like that." I stood up, suddenly feeling very clear about everything. "And you did it without asking me, without telling me, without even considering that maybe, just maybe, I deserved a say in what happened to my own money." "Our money," he corrected, and I swear I saw red. "Our money? Marcus, I put 32,000 into that account. You put 15. But sure, let's call it our money that you unilaterally decided to gamble away." The next morning, I called in sick to work. Not because I was physically ill, but because I needed time to process what had just happened. I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop, methodically going through our finances, our joint accounts, our shared credit cards. That's when I found the other withdrawals. Small ones over the past 8 months. 500 here, 1,000 there. All transactions I'd never authorized. All from our joint checking account. My careful budgeting, my meal planning, my coupon clipping. I'd been wondering why we never seemed to have as much money as I calculated we should have. Now I knew why. Marcus had been skimming money for months, probably funding his investment research or whatever fantasy he'd been living in. The 47,000 wasn't a one-time mistake of judgment. It was the grand finale of a months-long betrayal. When he came home from work that evening, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by bank statements and printouts. "Rachel, I know you're upset, but we can fix this. I'll talk to Derek again, maybe get a lawyer involved. How long have you been taking money from our accounts without telling me?" He froze in the doorway, his work bag still slung over his shoulder. "The checking account, Marcus. I found the withdrawals. 8 months of unauthorized transactions." I watched his face cycle through surprise, denial, and finally, resignation. I was going to pay it back, he said weakly. With what money? The money you gave to Derek? The money that's gone forever? That night, lying in bed beside a man who suddenly felt like a stranger, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to plead with him to fix what he'd broken. I was going to fix it myself. And Marcus had no idea what he'd just unleashed. The next few days revealed the true scope of what Marcus had done to us. To me. I took a personal day and spent it at the bank, talking to our financial advisor, requesting detailed transaction histories, and slowly piecing together the puzzle of my own financial destruction. It wasn't just Derek. It wasn't just one bad investment. Marcus had been living a double life for almost a year, and I'd been too trusting, too busy, too in love to notice. The financial advisor, Mrs. Patterson, looked at me with the kind of pity reserved for car accident victims. Mrs. Chen, I have to ask, were you aware that your fiancé opened a separate credit line using your joint assets as collateral? My hands went numb. He did what? 3 months ago. A $15,000 line of credit. It's currently maxed out. I stared at the paperwork she slid across her desk. There was my signature, or something that looked remarkably like it, authorizing Marcus to use our shared assets as collateral for debt I'd never agreed to take on. That's not my signature, I said quietly. Mrs. Patterson leaned forward. Are you saying this signature was forged? The room felt like it was spinning. I need to see all of it. Everything he's done with our accounts, our assets, our credit, everything. What I learned over the next 2 hours changed everything I thought I knew about the man I was supposed to marry. The credit line was just the beginning. Marcus had also opened 2 credit cards in my name, using my excellent credit score to secure high limits that he'd promptly maxed out. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, weekend trips he'd claimed were work conferences, all charged to cards I didn't know existed. The total debt in your name is approximately $28,000, Mrs. Patterson said gently. And that's not including the credit line. I did the math in my head. $47,000 from our savings, plus $28,000 in fraudulent debt, plus the $15,000 credit line. Marcus had cost me $90,000, but it was more than money. It was more than numbers on a screen. He'd destroyed my credit. He'd used my identity to fund a lifestyle I'd never agreed to. He'd looked me in the eye every morning for months, kissed me goodbye, and continued systematically ruining my financial future. When I got home that evening, Marcus was on the couch, acting like nothing had changed, like he hadn't just upended my entire life. How was work? He asked, not even looking up from his phone. I went to the bank today, I said, setting my purse down with deliberate calm. He looked up then, and I saw fear flicker across his face. Rachel, I can explain. The credit cards, Marcus. The ones you opened in my name. His face went pale. How did I find out that my credit score is ruined? How did I find out that I'm apparently $28,000 in debt for purchases I never made? My voice was getting louder, but I reined it in. I wasn't going to lose control. Not yet. I was going to tell you… When? After we got married and it became legally complicated to separate our finances? The silence that followed was deafening. That's it, isn't it? I continued, pieces clicking into place. This whole thing. The rushed wedding timeline, your insistence on joint accounts, your push to get married at City Hall instead of having a big ceremony. You were planning to trap me legally before I found out what you'd done. Marcus stood up, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Rachel, you're being paranoid. Am I? Then explain the signature on the credit line authorization. Explain how my name is on documents I never signed. He couldn't meet my eyes. You forged my signature, I said, and hearing it out loud made it real in a way that seeing it on paper hadn't. You committed fraud using my identity. It's not fraud if we're engaged. It's absolutely fraud, I snapped, my composure finally cracking. Being engaged doesn't give you the right to steal from me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to Marcus breathe, and I felt like I was sharing space with a criminal, which technically I was. The man I'd loved, The man I'd trusted with my heart and my future had systematically robbed me blind. And the worst part? He seemed to think he was entitled to do it. The next morning, while Marcus was at work, I started making phone calls. First, to a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. Then to the credit card companies to dispute the fraudulent accounts. Then to the bank to freeze our joint accounts and remove Marcus's access to anything with my name on it. But I didn't stop there. I called Marcus's workplace and asked to speak with his supervisor. I wanted to know about these work conferences he'd been attending. Mr. Rodriguez hasn't traveled for work in over 6 months, his supervisor told me. We don't have the budget for conferences this year. So where had he been going? What had he been doing with my money? I spent the afternoon playing detective, going through Marcus's things with the methodical precision of someone who finally understood she'd been living with a liar. In his dresser drawer, tucked behind his socks, I found receipts. Expensive restaurant meals for 2 at places I'd never been. Hotel stays in cities where he'd supposedly been alone on business. Jewelry purchases from stores I'd never shopped at. Marcus hadn't just stolen my money. He'd been using it to fund an affair. The woman's name was on some of the receipts. Sofia Martinez, a name I recognized from his phone contacts, someone he'd claimed was just a work friend. I sat on our bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of my fiancé's betrayal, and felt something crystallize inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about justice. Marcus thought he was smart. He thought he could manipulate me, steal from me, lie to me, and I'd just take it. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I wasn't just going to leave him. I wasn't just going to demand my money back. I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of man Marcus Rodriguez really was, and I was going to enjoy every single minute of it. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I've always preferred mine with a side of poetic justice and a garnish of public humiliation. Over the next week, while Marcus continued his charade of normalcy, I became a woman with a mission. During my lunch breaks at the hospital, I researched. During my evenings while he watched TV obliviously, I planned. The first thing I did was document everything. Every forged signature, every unauthorized transaction, every lie he'd told me about his whereabouts. I created a digital paper trail that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. But I wasn't going to the police. Not yet. Marcus had taught me something valuable about himself. He cared more about his reputation than almost anything else. He'd built this image of himself as the successful, trustworthy guy who had his life together. His co-workers respected him. His family adored him. His friends looked up to him. He'd never considered that his biggest vulnerability was also his greatest pride. I started with Sofia Martinez. A little social media stalking revealed that she was indeed Marcus's co-worker, but she was also married with 2 young children. Her Instagram was full of family photos and inspirational quotes about loyalty and commitment. The irony was almost too perfect. I created a fake email account and sent Sophia's husband a carefully crafted message with photographic evidence of his wife's restaurant visits and hotel stays with my fiancé. I didn't need to be cruel about it. The receipts spoke for themselves. Within 48 hours, Sofia had blocked Marcus on all social media platforms. The work conference texts stopped coming. Marcus noticed, of course. He became anxious, checking his phone constantly, making hushed phone calls from the garage. When I asked if everything was okay, he claimed it was work stress. The beautiful thing about pathological liars is that they're usually terrible at recognizing when they're being lied to. Phase 2 involved Marcus's family. His parents, Carlos and Maria Rodriguez, had always treated me like the daughter they never had. They'd welcomed me into their family with open arms, trusted me with their family recipes, and included me in every holiday celebration for 6 years. They deserved to know what their son had done, but I was strategic about it. I didn't want to seem vindictive or crazy. I wanted them to discover the truth organically. I invited Maria out for coffee, something we did regularly. Over lattes and pastries, I casually mentioned that Marcus and I were having some financial discussions about our future, and I wondered if she had any advice about managing money as a couple. "Of course, mija," she said warmly. "Carlos and I learned early that honesty about money is essential for a good marriage." "That's exactly what I think," I agreed. I just worry sometimes that Marcus might be too independent with financial decisions. Like, last week he mentioned some investment opportunity his cousin Derek had presented to him, and I wondered if you knew anything about Derek's business ventures. Maria's expression changed instantly. Derek? Oh, honey, you need to be careful. Derek has been in and out of financial trouble for years. Carlos had to loan him money 3 times, and we never saw a penny back. He's not reliable. I let my face show appropriate concern. Oh no, Marcus seemed to think Derek was doing really well with some kind of business opportunity. Mija, Derek lost his last business to bankruptcy 6 months ago. If he's asking Marcus for money, she trailed off, looking genuinely worried. I planted the seed and let Maria's maternal instincts take care of the rest. That evening, Marcus got a phone call from his mother. I could only hear his side of the conversation, but it was enough. Mom, everything's fine. No, I didn't give Derek any money. Why would you think that? Rachel said what? His eyes found mine across the room, and I saw suspicion there for the first time. After he hung up, he came over to where I was sitting. My mom seems to think I gave money to Derek for some investment, he said carefully. I looked up from my book with an expression of innocent confusion. Did you? You mentioned he had some business opportunity. I mentioned it in passing. I never said I gave him money. Oh, I said, returning to my book. Well, your mom seemed worried about it when I brought it up at coffee today. She told me about Derek's bankruptcy. I felt Marcus studying my face, trying to determine if I knew more than I was letting on. But I'd spent 6 years watching him lie to me with a straight face. I'd learned from a master. The next phase was the most delicate, his workplace. Marcus worked for a mid-sized accounting firm where reputation and trustworthiness were everything. A hint of financial impropriety could end his career, and he knew it. I didn't need to destroy him professionally. I just needed to introduce some doubt. I called the firm's HR department and spoke with the benefits coordinator, someone I'd met at company holiday parties. Hi, this is Rachel Chen, Marcus Rodriguez's fiancée. I'm trying to update our insurance beneficiaries before the wedding, and I had a question about the company's policy on employee financial conduct. Of course. What can I help you with? Well, if an employee were to have significant personal debt or financial issues, would that affect their position with the company? I know Marcus deals with client finances, and I just want to make sure we handle our own financial planning appropriately. There was a pause. That's actually a great question to ask. Yes, employees in positions of financial responsibility are required to maintain good personal credit and financial standing. Why do you ask? Is there something we should be aware of? Oh no, nothing specific, I said quickly. I just want to make sure we're being responsible as we plan our marriage. Thank you so much for the information. I hung up knowing that HR would probably mention the conversation to Marcus's supervisor, not as an accusation, but as a routine follow-up. In a firm where financial integrity was paramount, even casual questions about an employee's financial stability would raise eyebrows. By the end of the week, Marcus was unraveling. His girlfriend had cut contact, his mother was asking uncomfortable questions, and his workplace was suddenly interested in his financial wellness. But I wasn't done yet. The final phase of my plan was going to be the most satisfying, because it involved giving Marcus exactly what he'd given me. A public humiliation so complete that he'd never recover from it. And the beautiful part? He was going to walk right into it willingly. The annual Rodriguez family reunion was Marcus's Super Bowl. Every year, his extended family gathered to celebrate their success, show off their achievements, and generally bask in the glory of being related to each other. Marcus had been looking forward to this year's reunion for months. He'd planned to announce our engagement officially, show off his successful life, and probably brag about his business acumen to anyone who'd listen. I made sure we were still going. Are you sure you want to attend? Marcus asked nervously the morning of the reunion. I thought you might want to skip it this year, given everything. By everything, he meant the growing tension between us as his various lies began unraveling. His mother had been asking more questions. His work had scheduled a routine financial review for employees in sensitive positions. Sophia had gone completely dark. But Marcus still didn't know that I knew about the stolen money. As far as he was concerned, I was just suspicious and asking uncomfortable questions. Of course I want to go, I said sweetly. I've been looking forward to seeing your family. Besides, don't you want to announce our engagement? He looked relieved. In his mind, if I was still willing to attend family functions and talk about our engagement, I couldn't know the full truth about what he'd done. Poor Marcus. He'd underestimated me for the last time. The reunion was held at his Aunt Carmen's house, a sprawling property with a backyard perfect for large gatherings. By the time we arrived, about 40 family members were already there, including all the cousins, aunts, uncles, and family friends who'd watched Marcus grow up, including Derek. Derek, who'd been avoiding Marcus's calls for weeks, was standing by the barbecue pit, laughing with other cousins like he didn't have a care in the world. When he saw Marcus, his face went pale. "Marcus!" "Hey, man," Derek said, his voice unnaturally loud. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, well, it's the family reunion, Derek. Where else would I be?" I watched this exchange with interest, noting how Derek kept glancing at me like I was a bomb that might explode at any moment. "Derek," I said warmly, extending my hand, "it's so good to see you again. Marcus has told me so much about your business ventures." Derek's handshake was weak and sweaty. "Oh, yeah, business is, it's tough out there." "I'm sure it is," I agreed. "Marcus was so excited about that investment opportunity you two discussed. How did that work out?" The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus was staring at me with growing alarm, and Derek looked like he wanted to crawl into a hole. "Investment opportunity?" asked Uncle Carlos, who'd walked over with a plate of food. "What investment opportunity?" This was the moment I'd been waiting for. "Oh, didn't Marcus tell you?" I said, my voice carrying just enough to attract attention from nearby family members. Derek had this amazing business deal that promised triple returns. Marcus was so confident about it that he invested our entire wedding fund. Uncle Carlos nearly choked on his beer. "He did what?" $47,000, I continued, my voice still sweet and conversational. Marcus was so sure it would work out that he didn't even discuss it with me first. He wanted to surprise me with the returns. By now, we had an audience. Marcus's parents, his siblings, several cousins, and even some family friends were listening with growing interest and concern. "Derek," said Aunt Carmen slowly, "please tell me you didn't take money from Marcus for one of your schemes." Derek's face had gone from pale to green. "It wasn't... I thought it would work out." "You thought what would work out?" demanded Marcus's father, his voice rising. "Derek, what did you do with their money?" "It was a sure thing," Derek protested. "The cryptocurrency market was supposed to..." "Cryptocurrency," Uncle Carlos exploded. "You gambled their wedding money on cryptocurrency?" The family gathering had gone completely silent, except for Uncle Carlos's outrage, and Derek's stammered excuses. Everyone was staring at Marcus, who looked like he wished the ground would swallow him whole. But I wasn't finished. "That's not even the best part," I said, my voice cutting through Derek's protests. "Marcus was so confident about this investment that he also took out a $15,000 credit line using our joint assets as collateral. Without asking me, of course." Maria Rodriguez gasped and crossed herself. "And then," I continued, "when I went to the bank to understand our financial situation, I discovered that Marcus had also opened credit cards in my name and maxed them out. $28,000 worth of charges for restaurants, hotels, and jewelry that I never saw." The crowd was murmuring now, a low rumble of shock and disapproval. "So let me get this straight," said Marcus's older brother Antonio. "You stole $90,000 from your fiancé, gave it to Derek for a cryptocurrency scam, and committed identity fraud?" Marcus looked around the circle of family members, seeing nothing but disappointment and disgust in their faces. "It's not... I was going to pay it back," he stammered. "With what money?" I asked pleasantly. "The money you spent on hotel rooms with Sofia Martinez?" If the family had been shocked before, now they were scandalized. Marcus's grandmother made a sound of disgust and turned away from him. "You were cheating too?" demanded his sister Isabella. "Marcus, what is wrong with you?" "Sophia's married," I added helpfully, "with 2 small children. I thought her husband should know where his wife was spending her evenings, so I sent him copies of all the receipts Marcus kept. Apparently, they're getting divorced now. Marcus was shaking now. Whether from anger or humiliation, I couldn't tell. Rachel, stop, he said desperately. This is family. Exactly, I interrupted. This is family. These people love you, Marcus. They trusted you. They believed in you. And this is how you repay that trust? By stealing from the woman you supposedly love? And destroying another family with your affair? The silence stretched out painfully, until finally, Marcus's grandmother spoke. Mijo, she said sadly, you need to leave. Marcus looked around the circle of family members, searching for someone who might defend him, but found nothing but disappointment and shame. Grandma, please. Now, Marcus, you leave now. As Marcus walked away from his family, alone and disgraced, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. But the best part was still coming. 3 months later, I was sitting in my new apartment. A bright, spacious place that I could actually afford now that I wasn't subsidizing someone else's secret life, when my phone buzzed with a text from Maria Rodriguez. Mija, I hope you're doing well. I wanted you to know that we miss you, and you'll always be family to us, no matter what Marcus did. It was one of dozens of similar messages I'd received from his family over the past few months. Apparently, disowning a lying, cheating, thieving son didn't mean they had to lose the woman who'd been like a daughter to them for 6 years. The legal proceedings had gone exactly as I'd hoped. The evidence of fraud was overwhelming, and Marcus's lawyer had advised him to settle rather than face criminal charges. Every penny he'd stolen was being paid back, with interest, through a court-ordered payment plan that would keep him financially strapped for the next 5 years. His credit was ruined. His reputation was destroyed. His family had cut him off. And his job? Well, the routine financial review at his workplace had revealed some interesting discrepancies in his expense reports that led to his immediate termination. Derek, meanwhile, had fled to another state to avoid the multiple lawsuits coming his way from other family members who'd also been victims of his cryptocurrency scheme. But the most satisfying justice was the kind I hadn't even planned for. Sofia Martinez's divorce had become very public and very ugly. Her ex-husband had made sure that everyone in their social circle knew exactly why their marriage had ended. Sofia had lost custody of her children and was now working 2 jobs to pay for her legal fees. She'd tried to contact me once, through social media, with some pathetic message about how we women should stick together, and how Marcus had manipulated both of us. I'd blocked her without responding. As for Marcus himself, the last I'd heard from mutual acquaintances, he was living in a studio apartment across town, working as a night shift security guard, and had been forced to move back in with his parents briefly before they made it clear he wasn't welcome. His mother still called me occasionally, apologizing for her son's behavior and asking how I was doing. During our last conversation, she'd mentioned that Marcus had been asking about me, wondering if there was any chance for reconciliation. I'd laughed, not cruelly, but with genuine amusement. Maria, I'd said, your son taught me something very valuable about myself. He taught me that I'm stronger than I ever knew, smarter than I gave myself credit for, and absolutely capable of protecting myself from people who would hurt me. I'm so proud of you, Mija, she'd replied. You handled this with more grace than he deserved. Grace. That was an interesting word for it. The truth was, I hadn't destroyed Marcus out of spite or cruelty. I'd simply held up a mirror and forced everyone to see who he really was. Every consequence he'd faced was the direct result of his own choices, his own actions, his own lies. I'd just made sure those consequences found him. Sitting in my new apartment, surrounded by furniture I'd chosen myself and paid for with money I'd earned honestly, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace with my own life. My credit was slowly recovering. My savings account was growing again. My relationships were built on honesty and mutual respect. And Marcus? Marcus was learning what it felt like to have your life destroyed by someone you'd underestimated. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. Rachel, it's Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I know I messed up everything, and I know I hurt you in ways I can't fix. I miss what we had. Is there any chance we could talk? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back a single word. No. Then I blocked the number and deleted the conversation. Some people might call what I did to Marcus revenge. Others might call it justice, but I prefer to think of it as education. Marcus had taught me that I could be betrayed, stolen from, lied to, and humiliated by someone I loved. And I had taught him that actions have consequences. Trust once broken can never be repaired, and some lessons can only be learned the hard way. The best part? I was finally free to build a life with someone who would never make me question whether I was being paranoid for wanting honesty. Someone who understood that love isn't about what you can take from another person. It's about what you choose to give. And Marcus Rodriguez had given me the greatest gift of all, the knowledge that I was strong enough to save myself.